Hi, I'm Jason Logson from Adventure Logs, and today I'm finally gonna give my brutally honest review of the new Flysurfer Hybrids. Now we know it's not a peak that's relaunchable, but is it the right kite for you? Well, don't sell your peaks yet until you watch this. I have quite a long list to go over, so let's get to it. As I said earlier, this review is going to be pretty extensive. I have quite a lot of talking points. Something that I'm going to try to do this time is below, I'm going to put bookmarks in all the different aspects of this review, so you can kind of pick and choose what you want to see and things like that. Mostly, I'm going to be talking about the Hybrid 7.5. But I also will be talking about the 2.5. I would say I have at least 20-25 hours flying both of these combined. And mostly I'm going to compare the Hybrid to the Peak, because quite honestly, that's why we have the Hybrid. And most of the people now that are going to be interested in a Hybrid will have come from the Peak. So I figured it's pretty appropriate to compare both of them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to read a couple things from Flysurfer's websites. Mostly because, there's been a lot of hype, maybe a little misinformation about this Hybrid. And I want to be pretty straight that Flysurfer has told us what kind of kite this Hybrid really is. So right here off the flysurfer.com website, right on the Hybrid page, it says, entry into the sport. We had one goal in mind: make the kite sport more accessible. Safety and ease of use are the key requirements for the Hybrid. So safety and ease of use, that's the main goals. A little bit lower on the website, it says here, the Hybrid enables a safe and playful approach to the sport. The low weight and light bar forces allow children to fly the kite in lower wind range without any effort. This is the big thing. The low lift concept and immediate depower prevents beginners from being lifted away, inspires confidence in the kite. It is a revolution of the youngest twin-tip shredders, a playful kite for hydrofoiling, and a game changer for trainers. Okay? Now, I only got two more things to say. So now on the buyer's guide here, we have where it says, what advantages does a Hybrid have over the Peak? Compared to the Peak, it flies calmer, more predictability. The power spikes in the power zone are moderate. The Hybrid generates its power more gently. Steering is more initiative. It stalls and pivots later than other foil kites. Performance is accessible and easy control. And then lastly, here on the buyer guides at the bottom, under what's the difference between a Hybrid and the Soul? Do you want a kite stress-free in all conditions, on any surface? Then the Hybrid is your choice. The kite in which you want to make your first kite experiences, hydrofoil in the waves, or progress on hard ground. It has advantages in handling, maintenance, and transport, a kite that builds your confidence. Okay, so again, why did I go over this stuff? Well, Flysurfer is painting a picture here, right? This is a kite that seems to be very, very tame, or easy to fly. It looks like it's pretty focused towards beginners. So it is a little bit different than the Peak. So me coming into this kite thinking that I was going to basically have a Peak that had peak flying characteristics that also could relaunch, I was pretty disappointed. But that's my fault. I should have read it. Maybe I need to read that Apple thing in the beginning now, but that's my mistake. So to talk about the hybrid, we really need to talk about the Peaks. Because if there wasn't the Peaks, Flysurfer never would have made these hybrid kites. It's been 5 generations now of these Peak kites. They are a single skin construction, and they were initially designed for snow kiting. This is a kite that is meant to loop you up a mountain so then you can ski back down. Well, right around the Peak 3 or Peak 4, mostly at the Peak 4 generation, there started to be a little bit of a cult following with hydrofoiling, where it really became the kite of choice for hydrofoiling. Now why? Why is that? Well, the Peak had a lot of pretty neat characteristics. It was initially designed, like I said, to go up the mountain, so it has a huge power spike when you loop it. So that was great. That meant that I could fly a kite that was like half the size or a third of the size that everyone else was flying. And that just makes a small kite is just more fun. It's more playful. It's easier to move around. Also, these suckers pack really small. Now the hybrid doesn't pack as small, but it's pretty close. This is the kite and the bar. It's teeny. I love that you can have, in one normal size kite bag, you could have like 2 or 3 Peaks or hybrid. Another huge advantage of the Peak was that it drifted really well. So this again went hand in hand with hydrofoiling, and the Peak was just a very dynamic kite. It spin around, you can backstall it. It was very maneuverable. The only real problem with the Peak was it wasn't water relaunchable. Now some people claim that they are able to relaunch, and I have been able to relaunch my Peaks in the past, but it isn't something that you can rely on, and it's something that you always have to keep in the back of your mind. So here comes the hybrid. Now the hybrid, like the name, is a combination between, let's say, if the sole, which is a normal double skin foil kite, had sex with the Peak, which is only a single skin kite. If they had a baby, they would have this sucker, which is basically a combination of both. Now up above, I'm going to put the link where I physically show you the build differences between the Peak 5 and the hybrid. I had both the 2.5 meter in the Peak 5 and the hybrid, so then you can compare side by side exactly the same sizes, what the differences are. Mostly the bridle is much different. It's much shorter on the hybrid compared to the Peak. There is no metal whatsoever on the bridle on the hybrid. Unlike the Peak, that where you attach your bar lines to have little metal hoops, and up in the 5th line safety into the wing, they have little metal hoops as well. Hybrid doesn't have anything like that. And Flysurfer says that basically the hybrid and the Peak are pretty close in weights, and I would agree with that, and I can see how it's done. The hybrid is a really funny shaped foil kite, in my opinion. It's unlike anything that anyone else has really put out. And if the name wasn't really taken by a different kite, I would say that the UFO would be a pretty appropriate kite. Now, it has a much lower aspect ratio than the Peak, so that definitely changes the characteristics. So let's talk about the performance and handling of the hybrid. If you've watched any of my other kites, you will see that I like a very dynamic kite. What does this mean? Is that I like to actively fly the kite around. I like to loop the kite, backstall the kite, have quite a lot of fun. Essentially, what it comes down to for me is the kite portion of kiteboarding is just as important as the boarding aspect. And the peak has been great for that. The peak is very easy to backstall. It's very easy to spiral. You can throw the kite around quite a lot. And to me, I love that. The hybrid is very, very different. It's not what I would call a performance kite by any means. First off, the powerful loop that the peak is well known for, you're not gonna, the hybrid doesn't have that. So that means that if you were to compare, let's say you compare the 2.5 peak 5 to the 2.5 hybrid, I would say that the hybrid probably has maybe a 5 knot higher low end. There have been times where I have used both the 2.5 peak and hybrid back to back, and I have not been able to get up and get going with the hybrid, or with the peak I can get up and I can almost stay upwind. So that does make a big difference. But on the other hand, on the high end, I think the hybrid has a much, much higher end and is much more docile in higher winds. In the larger sizes, it's next to impossible to backstall. In that 7.5, I took out probably like a good 5-6 centimeters in the steering lines, and it still was really difficult to get it to backstall. And with such short steering lines, there was this so heavy bar pressure that I didn't like it. So since this kite doesn't really backstall, that means that it doesn't spiral turn, which I really love to do. It more loops than pivots. So with that, it's a little bit more difficult to make quick turn changes or direction changes. But this has an advantage where if you're just starting off, or you're just learning to hydrofoil, or if you're in a place where you just want to concentrate on the wave, this kite is pretty easy to forget. You can just kind of throw it up there and it'll just, it'll do what you want it to do and you don't have to think about it. The hybrid, I can't throw it around where I want it to go because this kite just doesn't move around. The biggest thing is that when you release the bar, the kite just stays there. Most of the foil kites, when you release the bar, it will shoot forward in the wind window, which is great. You can use this a lot for getting up on the foil, because in your upstroke, you can use that, accelerate the kite, pull the bar back in, and use that momentum and power to get up on the foil and go. You really can't do that with the hybrid. Also, a lot of times I like to redirect my kite well before I redirect myself, and I will use that shooting forward to propel myself in the other direction. So I use that feature all the time, and the hybrid doesn't do that, and it's been very, very frustrating to say the least. Again, when it comes to turning, you really need to crank the bar quite a lot to get it to turn fairly quick. I noticed quite a lot that I would be reaching up and grabbing the steering line up higher than the float, pulling it to get the kite to turn as quick as I like to. But again, this means that the kite is very stable. This is a kite that you don't need to worry about accidentally moving the bar and having it crash into the water. The bar pressure is different than the peak. I would say that the hybrid probably has the highest bar pressure of any of the foils in Flysurfer's line. I haven't flown the Veron, but it would be a pretty good guess to say that the hybrid has fairly higher bar pressure. Not to say it's very high compared to like a inflatable, but for a foil kite, it is a little bit higher. And quite honestly, you're only really using the last couple inches of the bar to get it to do anything. Now, at that time, I was still coming back from my shoulder surgery, and my shoulder didn't like it, and that shortened my sessions. I got used to it, but it is something to know that if you come from, like, say, the peaks are pretty light, or the Sonic with lighter bar pressure, this is something that will take a little bit to get used to. So let's talk about the relaunch, since this is the parlor trick of the hybrid. Honestly, I could honestly say that the hybrid relaunches better than any foil kite I've ever flown. It relaunches a little bit different. Again, since it's a little bit more hard, more difficult to backstall, it really doesn't reverse water relaunch as easy. But I mean, just grabbing one steering line, that kite, since it's so rounded, just easily comes back up and relaunches. So that is really great. The hybrid reminds me quite a lot of the Peak 4. And the way that I say this is that the hybrid flutters a lot. So you can see in some of my other videos, about half of it is really not supported. And quite honestly, in the beginning, I didn't think that this kite had very many, if any, of those plastic trimmer lines because it just flutters so much. So what it comes down to is the hybrid has about half of those plastic stiffeners than a Peak does. So it definitely flaps quite a lot. I mean, to the point where I can hear it over my music, and sometimes it would scare people just because it's just such a loud kite. Personally, I think it was designed into this kite because, again, it slows it down and prevents the kite from pushing forward. It helps with the drift, but it just isn't as comfortable and it's not as quiet. Other performance-wise, the hybrid isn't as good going upwind as the Peak. And the Peak, compared to, say, the Soul or the Sonic, has never been that great, but that doesn't matter when you hydrofoil. Well, the hybrid is a little bit less. But on the other hand, I think the hybrid drifts better than any other foil kite I've ever used. 4-line slack, no problem. Going directly into the kite, no problem. This kite drifts. So that is amazing. Is the hybrid for you? If you're like me, where you're an advanced hydrofoiler, where you like to throw your kite around, you know, you like to have fun, the hybrid most likely is going to make you a little frustrated. But if you're a beginner just learning to hydrofoil, or if you're in some pretty gnarly conditions, the hybrid is pretty good. So for me, I'm going to keep my 2.5 meter hybrid. I think I like it better than the Peak 2.5. Yeah, you lose a lot of bottom end, but in 30+ knot winds, I don't want to have to worry about relaunching a kite. I don't want to have to really watch it with the turns. The fact that this thing has been sedated or dumbed down a little bit really helps. Now the 7.5 meter, honestly, the kite's not for me. I don't enjoy it. It's not a performance kite. It doesn't do what I want it to do. I just don't like it. So I'm going to, so that's a kite that I'm not going to keep. So again, before my accident, a gin dealer got a hold of me and gave me a very, very good deal on the new Gin Marabou 2 in the 8 meter. So I'm really looking forward to really comparing these. I was able to get one flight with this kite before I was unable to walk again. And I would say that this kite, first impressions, is a lot more like a peak than the hybrid. So definitely stay tuned for that. So hopefully that covers everything on this kite. If you have any questions that I didn't go over, please go ahead and put it below. Make sure you check out all my other videos. I have inflation, landings, just little short videos of this new hybrid. I just want to end this video with more of a question to Flysurfer. Why did you make this kite so dumbed down? It's just, I am not a kite designer by any means, but there seems to be some design features put into this kite that was specifically done to sedate the kite. Between the very flat edge of the hybrid, which slows the kite down and prevents it from shooting forward, to the flapping, it could have been done much more performance orientated. I don't understand why you have to make another kid-focused kite. You already have the Viron, I think it is. Is there such a demand that you had to make the hybrid also for kids? The hybrid is because of the hydrofoilers on the peak, and most of the hydrofoilers that are flying the peak, they're more intermediate to advanced kiters. So obviously that's what they're going to want out of the hybrid, and it's like it was completely the opposite. I just have to say personally, this kite, it's been a disappointment. I've been a huge fan of Flysurfer forever. I mean, forever. And I have flown almost all their foil kites. And unfortunately, this designed to go safe. I think you're going to lose some customers. I mean, because of this hybrid, this is the first time in a decade that I reached out and I bought a different brand foil kite. I think getting to the point, and especially in the hydrofoiling thing, where there's a lot of intermediate to advanced riders that want the hybrid that hasn't been dumbed down, which very well could be what this gin is. Don't get me wrong, the hybrid isn't a bad kite. It's an excellent kite, but it's just a bad kite for me. And I think that if you're an advanced rider, you're gonna probably be more disappointed in it. So make sure you demo them before you buy them. So I guess that's just my last point. You know, these Flysurfers coming out with these fantastic kites, but it seems more and more that Flysurfer is choosing to go safe and docile than push the performance edge. And I know Flysurfer can do it. So yeah. So anyhow, so there you go. My extensive, brutally honest. Can't say that I am a fanboy and love everything. I always try to be as very honest as I can with my gear. Hopefully this helps some of you guys that might be on the edge deciding, you know, hey, do I want a peak or do I want the hybrid? And you know, anything, my big advice, if you can go out there and demo it, you can always go ahead. Hey, if you see me down here in South Padre Island, and I'm riding it, you want to try it out, I'm always more than willing to let you go ahead and try it out. So thanks for watching. Hopefully the doctors are saying I should be walking here or at least walking better here in a month or so. So hopefully after that, it won't take much longer to get me in the water. So hopefully this spring I get some time under the gin so I can do a good comparison between the Flysurf and the gin. So until next time, this is the Jason Logs from Adventure Logs. I'll see you on the water. Thanks for watching.